Back on my grizzly again. Back on my grizzly again. Back on my grizzly again. Back on my grizzly again.
Yo, welcome ladies and gentlemen to Dishhhtribute with me, your host, Damon Geis. In today's show, we have plenty to cover. The NBA Finals will be a topic, of course, as I break down Game 2 and give my predictions for Game 3 this coming Wednesday, and tell you guys why I believe this series will ultimately come down to KD versus Kawhi. In the NFL, we discuss Gronk quieting reports of a comeback, as well as Saquon's prediction for Daniel Jones to win not one, but 2 Super Bowls. Lastly, in pro wrestling, I'll discuss the masterpiece that was this past weekend's NXT Takeover and a preview for tonight's Monday Night Raw. To end today's show, I have a big announcement regarding Pack Business and making magic this coming week with the guys over at the Pack Life Pod. To start things off, we'll go to the National Basketball Association, as the Golden State Warriors were able to tie up the NBA Finals against the Toronto Raptors 1-1. When I look at last night's game, I believe it ultimately came down to Golden State showing their championship pedigree. I think that they were able to, be comfortable within the game plan. In Game 1, you could see that, how Toronto was shooting shots and getting open shots. Golden State wasn't their normal selves. They weren't rotating on defense, which led to Toronto getting open shots. Most of their spotlight went towards Kawhi, and that, allowed room for Siakam and Van Fleet, and also Marc Gasol to get off some good shots. When you look at Game 2, though, Golden State came out with that mindset that they always do, that they're going to get it done on both sides of the ball. As soon as they get the rebound, push in transition and look for that 3 ball as well. And I think that last night you were able to see that Golden State is still themselves. Without KD, people have said that it's harder, and you can see for them, it's harder for them to get in that comfortable in the offense, and things are more crowded on Curry and Clay, especially off the screens, trying to get those shots off. And Toronto has done, still, even after last night, a great job of closing out on screens, making sure they're up on the Splash Brothers. But the biggest story for the Warriors last night was Boogie, and I would equally say Quinn Cook. Quinn Cook was able to knock down back-to-back triples, which at the fourth quarter point, it's really dreadful for, somebody besides Clay or Curry to hit threes for you against you if you're Toronto. And it just proved to be too much. When I was watching the game, I just believe Toronto was shooting more threes than they needed, and it kind of felt like a Houston game. With Toronto, the defensive effort is always going to be there, but with Golden State, once they get a lead at a certain point, it's kind of hard to close the gap, and you could see that in the fourth quarter last night. Steph Curry was able to get it together after starting 1 for 7. And you just felt like he was, he hit back-to-back triples heading into the third quarter. And Golden State's going to go on that coveted third quarter run. When they came out in the second half, it took Toronto till 5 minutes left in the third quarter to get some points on the board. And you just can't have that if you're facing this juggernaut that is the Golden State Warriors. Now, looking ahead to Game 3, if Clay can't go, I'm going to go ahead and take the Raptors. I make the argument that Clay's potential injury, now they have said that, of course Clay is going to come out and say he's going to be good, he's going to go suit out Game 3, but we have to wait on the results, so we'll go from there. But if Clay's not able to go, it's very devastating for Golden State, regardless if KD comes back. I can make the argument that injury to Clay is more devastating than KD. Now, of course, Clay is not the better player, but when you look at what he does for Golden State, I would say he's the second most important player behind Curry, and how Curry is able to get the team spaced offensively and everything along those lines. Curry is the system, but I believe Clay, him being the primary defender and the ability to hit shots home or away, if Clay can't go, I'm going to go ahead and take the Raptors, because I believe that they'll be able to play off that, in Golden State not really knowing, how we can get a bucket if Clay and KD are not on. If KD is able to come back in Game 3, that moves Curry back to the secondary primary scoring option, which works in a benefit for the Raptors, because when you look at what they want to do, you playing ISO ball against Kawhi, the Raptors are going to take their chances with that. And ultimately, I know how great KD is, but for the Raptors, if you're going to go down, you want Kawhi to go down swinging. Now, if Clay does go, I'm going to take the Dubs. Either way, I believe this game will be neck and neck from start to finish, like the first two, but I believe Clay's status determines the winner. Now, today's title, Inevitable, is not only a shout out to Thanos, of course, but also how I believe these finals will ultimately come down to KD versus Kawhi. Whoever wins this matchup, is able to lead their team to the finals victory, I believe will head into next year with the title of best player in the world. For KD, he has the potential to return from injury and wrap up his time with the Dubs with 3 straight rings and 3 straight finals MVPs. He'll be able to take those accomplishments, whether he's going to the Knicks, which the media have hyped people up to believe. Me, shockingly, people don't agree, but I think Kyrie's going to leave, and that opens up the door for KD to go to Boston. I really think that's a possibility, but more on that in the coming weeks. For Kawhi, he can either leave Toronto or return. That reports have said he'll take a short-term deal in return. And, he can do that by taking down the juggernaut in the Golden State Warriors and head into next year being recognized as the best player in the world with his second finals MVP, his second ring. Either one of these guys' legacy and, clout, you could say, going into next year will be sky high, and they most likely pass LeBron officially as the world's best player and head into next year with that title. Switching over to the National Football League, June pretty much means NBA Finals and NFL quotes. So everything that's said by the NFL's best players is going to be highly touted. And we'll start with the NFL player who actually just retired. Gronk has told the NFL media to go ahead and put a comeback talk to rest. He's content with retiring. Now, I think Gronk may come back, not this year, but the season after next, but that remains to be seen. The outlook for the Patriots, though, coming off a Super Bowl win, I still have them as favorites in the AFC. With Gronk, he's an all-time great player, but you knew the injuries were there. And let's not act like the Patriots haven't won a Super Bowl without him. Now, what they've done since Gronk has announced his retirement is they drafted a receiver, Harry, in the first round. In addition to that, they still have Julian Edelman, who won't be taking any time for a suspension coming off this year. They still have the great Sony Michel and James White, all those guys in the offense, and Josh McDaniels is still at the forefront, and we know who's under center. So for the Patriots, I'm not too concerned. Like I said, I know Gronk is an all-time great player, one of the best tight ends to ever lace him up. But when you have a guy who is considered the GOAT, not only the GOAT quarterback, but the GOAT of football, one of, you have room to, lose great players, but still make up for that by the play of Tom Brady. So for the Patriots, I'm not too worried. I do think, in the run game, they'll have to find, they brought in Ben Watson, but, we'll be able to see how they'll be able to seal off the edge with Gronk out. I believe a very underrated aspect of Gronk games is his blocking in the run game. So we'll see how the Patriots are able to rally without that. Now, speaking of Gronk retiring also, we'll do our tight end rankings. Number 5, I'm going to go ahead with Jared Cook. And this is my tight end rankings heading into 2019 based off their play in 2018. Now, with Jared Cook, he had a very surprising 2018, I would say. For the underwhelming Oakland Raiders, Jared Cook was one of the bright spots with them trading, Amari Cooper and not having too many offensive pieces. He was Derek Carr's security blanket. He had some pretty good stats, and now he heads over to New Orleans with Drew Brees, a better quarterback, let's call it what it is, one of the all-time greats. And for the Saints, I believe that, a tight end was something that they missed in their game last year. And someone who could take the top off. If Cook's got a little bit of speed, he also can make some magic down the seams. So I do look to Jared Cook to have a good season for the New Orleans Saints, put their offense over the top as far as, second options go for Mike Thomas and Alvin Kamara out the backfield. My number 4 tight end in the league, I'm going to go with Eric Ebron. Now, Ebron came on big last year for the Indianapolis Colts. People didn't predict, I don't think anybody predicted him to have the season he had. Led the league in touchdowns, I believe, or definitely led tight ends with touchdowns. And you could just see, immediately he has that connection that with Andrew Luck that the Lions wish that Matthew Stafford would have had with Ebron, with him being a first-round pick. But nonetheless, with T.Y. Hilton and, taking most of the attention, and Marlon Mack, people having to respect him now, Eric Ebron is able to get those one-on-one matchups, and he's making teams pay. So I look forward to seeing if him and Andrew Luck can continue that rapport going into this year. My number 3 tight end in the NFL is going to be one George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. Kittle was still getting his, and that's the frustrating thing. When a player is really great, how they produce offensively with their quarterback out of the game. You look to DeAndre Hopkins or Adrian Peterson not having a legit quarterback for so many years. It's just, if a guy's able to continue be the main part of your game plan, even with their quarterback out, you can tell he's great. And Kittle has done exactly that, putting up 200-yard games against the Broncos, giving the Seahawks trouble. Kittle, very young player, but a long career ahead of him. I look forward to seeing how him and Jimmy G, though, a healthy Jimmy G, can put fire through the NFC. My number 2 tight end in the league, now this is very hard, who the top 2 are going to be between Kelsey and Ertz. But for the number 2 spot, I'm going to go ahead with Zach Ertz. I do believe Ertz is right there with Travis Kelsey as far as being the best tight end in football. But with Kelsey, I believe that you've been talking about him taking the mantle of best tight end in the league from Gronk for a couple of years. So I'm going to go ahead and pay him respect and officially give him that title heading into next year. With Ertz, though, it's not far. Ertz broke the single-season record for tight end catches, had 118 to Travis Kelsey's 103. I do believe that the Kansas City more runs through what Mahomes does, in addition to Tyreek Hill, and the verdict will still be seen to see if Tyreek Hill will even be playing this year. So more will probably be on the shoulders of Travis Kelsey. But with that being said, you look to Zach Ertz and his production in Philly. He's Carson Wentz and / was Nick Foles' security blanket. 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 14. If there was any doubt about who the ball was going to in Philly, it was going to Zach Ertz, and there was nothing you can do to stop it. Teams would try to put a corner on him, too small. Teams would try to put a safety on him. You look to the Harrison Smiths of the world and what he did to him in the NFC Championship a few years back. The guy's just a monster, man. And he's a monster. He's a nightmare matchup, and, he can do it any way. You're running outs, running quick slants. You can line him up as a receiver, and he'll give whoever trouble. So, number 2 spot, I'm going to go with Zach Ertz. But, of course, number 1, Travis Kelsey, as I mentioned. There's a new 87 sheriff in town, and Travis Kelsey, has led the league in receiving yards for tight ends for plenty of years. I believe he broke a record for most consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards for a tight end. This guy, you look back a couple years ago when Alex Smith was, calling the shots, and they had a playoff matchup against Tennessee, and when he went down, the whole team, not just the offense, but the whole team was demoralized. Travis Kelsey, I would say, is one of the vocal leaders for Kansas City. But offensively, what he does for this team, it is not matched. In the red zone, he's an unbelievable weapon. Led the league in touchdowns as far as, second in touchdowns behind Eric Ebron with 10. Kelsey is just a matchup nightmare, again, just like Ertz. But I believe, Kelsey is able to... I believe Kelsey is more of a home run option than Zach Ertz, and that's what puts him over the top for me. Now, another NFL quote that came out this week is Saquon Jones telling the media at his football camp, wait until he wins 2 Super Bowls when discussing Daniel Jones. Now, my outlook on Daniel Jones, most people don't like the pick with the Giants using one of their first-round picks this year to pick Daniel Jones. Of course, they needed a quarterback. Most people would say that that's not the quarterback that they wanted the Giants to take. But with this kid, he has his whole career ahead of him as the head of one of the NFL's top franchises. No player can truly be judged until their talent is shown on the field. People didn't like Trubisky, but the Bears fans are pretty excited for their future with Mitch. He had the most throws over 50 yards last year in the entire league, and made magic all season with his legs, and that's a very underrated and unexpected part of his game. Now he's going into the entire offseason with confidence in Nagy's playbook also, knowing that he can win the division. Now that's me saying anything can happen. So with Daniel Jones, I don't have a negative opinion or positive opinion on him. His play will determine my outlook on him, and I believe that's how it should be for any player coming into the league, regardless of draft position, because if you tell a high pick that you're expecting a lot out of them, there's a lot of pressure there. But that's why you see a lot of lower round guys or guys who go undrafted. They have a lot to prove. So for me, I'm just waiting to see how he looks on the field. With him being Eli's successor, there's obviously a lot of expectations, like I said, going to one of the NFL's top franchises, one of the most talked about franchises in the media. You also have a team that's in the same division as the Cowboys, so of course they're going to get a lot of attention. But Eli won 2 Super Bowls. With Saquon saying this kid is going to win 2 Super Bowls, I mean, of course that's a stretch. Not a stretch, but very bold prediction. We'll have to see how this kid looks. If you look at the highlight tape with him coming out of college at Duke, there was some high moments, there were some low moments, but the Giants believed that he was their guy, so they went ahead and made that pick. Now we just have to see how he's able to, fit in with the offense, how he's able to take the offense and take what Pat Shermer's giving off. At points last year, you could take a look at that Giants offense with what they did with Saquon out of the backfield, even running the ball, and the offensive line that you felt like wasn't too skilled. The Giants have gone ahead and put some money towards that and tried to build towards it. But when you look at, how Odell was able to be successful in multiple 2-touchdown games, there's room for that offense to be successful. We've seen it. Case Keenum was even able to make that offense a threat. Now, we just have to see the pieces come together, and I believe that is going to take time. But the Giants trading away Odell, I believe, they're completely ready for that. As far as my thoughts on the Giants heading into the 2019 NFL season, I do believe that they won both of the trades that they performed, especially with the Cleveland Browns. You look to the trade that they did with the Buccaneers, I believe, and they were able to, dump. Oh no, both trades with the Cleveland Browns. They were able to dump Olivier Vernon's big contract, which was a plus for them, get his contract off the books, and then later they were able to get Kevin Zeitler back, guard, which I said improving their line with Saquon being their number one most prized possession now. They also, I believe, which most people don't agree, but that's okay, they won the trade when they traded Odell Beckham. Now we know that the big contract that they gave OBJ was going to do a lot to their team and flexibility as far as what you're able to do, but now they get rid of him. They bring in Jabril Peppers, a very good safety, young safety, which they needed to do, losing Landon Collins. So I believe that the Giants were able to win both trades. As far as 2019, I do think that they'll see what they have as far as their young players, try to dump the guys that they think, may not be a good fit for what they have going on. But I think they're going to go ahead and give Shermer a few years to settle in with Daniel Jones. This will probably be Eli's last hoorah. So at some point in the season, when they're start getting on a back-to-back losing stretch, I expect Daniel Jones to come in. And I'm excited to see what he can do. Now, switching over lastly to our last topic of the day, professional wrestling. We have NXT Takeover. What an event, man. Triple H continues to put on. I can't wait till he officially gets, control of what goes on in the main roster, because if it's anything like the product that he continues to put on NXT, well then those ratings will cease to fall. Matt Riddle versus Roderick Strong of the Undisputed Era. Just a very physical match. One of my favorites of this year so far. Non-stop action. And I do believe that Matt Riddle could be one of Adam Cole's first challengers for the NXT Championship. More on that later. The Street Profits won the Tag Team Championships in a 14 ladder match. There was plenty of fire spots in this match. You look to O'Reilly being powerbombed into the ladder, which was crazy, and then Fish coming down on top of him. You also have the amazing finish with the spear under the ladder, and then one of the Street Profit guys springboarding onto the ladder, which was, entertaining for a finish. You saw that, and I believe that, the tag team division for NXT had been, you believe it would be a little shaky with guys going up to the main roster, but with the Undisputed Era there, and now the Street Profits, holding gold, NXT is always going to figure it out. Next, you have Velveteen Dream retaining his North American Championship over Tyler Breeze. I really like the idea of wrestlers going back to NXT. I think NXT, like I said earlier to start this topic, could rival Raw or SmackDown as an overall brand, like ECW used to do, and you used to have the 3 brands. I love how every title is actually defended at TakeOver, something you think would definitely be done on the main roster, but unfortunately not. NXT may be the key, though, like I said, to boosting back ratings. When you look to the shows, they're similar to what most fans want, and you look to what fans complain about. You don't see too much great wrestling. It shouldn't be to the point where you see AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins and that's going to be the only great wrestling match on the card. It shouldn't be that way. I believe as much time goes into promo making should go into making sure that you're getting the highest quality matches for the fans. Quality and quantity, I believe, is great when you're talking wrestling, and that's something that AEW is doing a great job of, and I believe WWE needs to take a look at that as well as NXT and bring it to the main roster and apply that to how they're doing these storylines. Next, you have Shayna Baszler retaining her title, NXT Women's title, over Io Shirai. Now, Shirai had plenty of nice moments, and she had the crowd on their feet for most of the match, but Baszler were able to pull through. Shirai attacked her after the match, though. She even did a cool moonsault spot with a chair, amongst other things. So, together, their rival is just getting started. I must say, though, I'm a big fan of Shayna Baszler. I can't wait to see her on the main roster when she eventually drops the NXT Women's title. And I can't wait to see her face off against, the Beckys of the world, Charlotte Flair, Asuka, even Ronda Rousey. I'm not too sure about the Rousey thing, as WWE has also teased the UFC 4 Horsewoman versus the original NXT 4 Horsewoman. So at Mania at some point, so I'm also hyped for that. But right now, there's too many top women on the main roster. I believe that they're in need of a mid-card title for the women, but until then, Baszler can continue to be the NXT Women's division until she's needed. Now, lastly, you have the main event. Adam Cole beating Johnny Gargano for the NXT title. Rematch of the great 2 out of 3 falls match that they had at NXT Takeover New York. This match was filled with brilliant spots. The main event in NXT is just going to be great, all-time great. But the spots that took place in this match, you had Adam Cole doing the Canadian Destroyer, Panama Sunrise is called in NXT, on the outside floor, jumping off the mat and then performing it. You had Cole doing the knee during the, attacking Gargano's knee during the Gargano escape. A literal super kick party. I think this will finally send Gargano to the main roster to help with the ratings. Him being that Daniel Bryan underdog type guy in his Mania run. But I think NXT is in great hands with Adam Cole in the Undisputed Era. And we'll see, who his next challenger be. I think it'll be Matt Riddle, but you never know who they are interested in bringing on the scene. They could have Velveteen Dream drop the title and go towards the NXT title. So, interested to see what NXT has next. As far as the main roster, though, we have Monday Night Raw tonight. Brock Lesnar will, quote-unquote, be, well, not quote-unquote, but let's just say Paul Heyman has said he's cashing in tonight on Seth. I don't believe it. Brock hasn't competed on Raw in I don't know how long. He might be for real though because of the ratings, so there's a possibility. Watch out for Baron Corbin interfering in the match. Maybe they'll have him, do something, and then Brock be mad about it. Maybe cash in at Super Showdown, which would be good for the fans there. Brock was there last year. I'm predicting that they want to have him there again this year, so we'll see what they do with that. We also have Undertaker making an appearance tonight, hyping up his match with Goldberg, with them facing off for the first time ever. They're going to need this. Of course, they got to bring the legends back to help the ratings increase as they are at an all-time low. Of course, I expect, WWE to try to do something special tonight with AEW still being the most talked about thing in wrestling. Jon Moxley, a.k.a. Dean Ambrose, going over there. And there's been reports of CM Punk also coming, to AEW in August, I believe, when they have their event in Chicago. CM Punk has been my favorite wrestler for as long as I can remember, so I'm definitely going to be jumping ship if he comes back. But I believe right now, while, AEW is working out their details with TNT and trying to get the TV deal all squared away and setting up future dates, WWE has to remind people now that they are the brand and come out firing and, make this their time. Now, in closing of today's episode, that will be all. I'd like to let you guys know that I'll be heading to Atlanta this week to make some Pack Magic. Special edition episode coming later this week with the guys over at the Pack Life Pod. Yeah, that's right. Myself, Bruiser, Cut, Lil B, and even more special guests. Stay tuned for details later this week. Be sure to follow Dishhhtribute on Instagram and Twitter at Dishhhtribute. Also, follow my personal page on Twitter and IG at DemonGeist. Be sure to check out the latest episode of the Pack Life Pod and follow at Pack Life Pod on IG and Twitter. And also at Pack Brand to stay up to date with everything Packed. Also, be sure to go cop yourselves some Packed merch. I am your host, DemonGeist of Dishhhtribute. Until next time. Shh.